It's being called greedflation. Big corporations racking up mega profits by raising their prices well above inflation. Critics call it obscene, and we are all paying the cost.
We have breaking news. Westpac has just released its half-yearly results.
Our biggest bank has just posted its biggest annual profit, a record $10.16 billion.
Just over $4 billion in profit in the first half of 2023. That's nice, isn't it?
Handy.
They've been coming at us thick and fast. Multi-billion-dollar profits from the big end of town, while regular Aussies are tightening their belts to breaking point.
Well, I don't think I've ever seen so many household bills going up so steeply all at the same time.
People are struggling to pay their bills, they're skipping meals. At the same time, companies have exploited this whole situation in order to increase their profits.
It's being called greedflation, where businesses are accused of using the high inflation environment as an excuse to raise their prices more than they should. Effectively, price gouging.
Raising their prices by 25% while also announcing, record profits or record cash earnings shows that some businesses are tone deaf at the moment.
Money-saving expert Joel Gibson says big banks are especially in the firing line. CommBank recently announcing a $10 billion profit built on margins extracted from rising interest rates that are crippling many family budgets.
There's no question that banks have a case to answer when it comes to not passing on interest rate rises to savers in the past year as quickly as they have to borrowers.
CommBank CEO Matt Comyn, whose own salary tops $10 million this year, addressed the disparity when announcing those record results.
We are very conscious that many Australians are feeling under pressure in the current environment. We are proactively supporting customers in need.
CBA's copped most of the flack in the banking sector lately for a $10+ billion record profit, but there are little banks like Bendigo and Adelaide Bank too that have just announced record cash earnings, so it's right across the sector.
The flying kangaroo is flying higher than ever.
Qantas, another corporate high flyer with a record profit off the back of high ticket prices.
Our balance sheet is the strongest it's been in decades.
I think it's particularly galling to see, record profits being announced by airlines such as Qantas at a time when, over the past year, their service levels have been appalling.
So thank you very much, everybody.
And this really galls ordinary Australians because all of us are really struggling at the moment to pay the bills. We've gone backwards. The average worker has gone backwards nearly 6%.
Sally McManus is Secretary of the Australian Council of Trade Unions, which has announced its own inquiry into corporate price gouging, to be chaired by former ACCC boss Dr Alan Fells. His aim is to analyse the connection between living standards and surging corporate profits.
We believe that by putting a spotlight on the issue, those companies will need to think twice before getting away with putting up their prices more than they need to.
Members of the public are encouraged to make submissions. The sectors most complained about so far are supermarkets, then energy, insurance and banks.
This is having a real life impact for working families, for pensioners, for everyone, for all Australians. We do not believe companies in Australia should get away with price gouging. It needs to be stopped.
I think Australian businesses need to get outside the bubble and just understand how tough some Australian families are doing it right now.
Joel Gibson believes insurance costs are a sneaky hip pocket pain, with home policy premiums rising a whopping 28% this year.
Insurance is a grudge purchase. It's an essential, but not as essential as turning the lights on or putting food on the table. So some people are going to cancel their insurance and go uninsured, and that's no good for any of us.
Net profit after tax to $2.1 billion.
Telstra is also under fire for its price increases.
We've seen the biggest telco in the country, Telstra, put up their prices by 7% in line with CPI in July, which they now do every year, regardless of whether their actual costs are rising by that amount.
Now all big corporations are on notice that Alan Fells is on their case.
We're watching what you're doing. We'll be shining a light on what you're doing. don't think that you're going to get away with putting up prices more than you need to.
I think right now, given how tough some families are doing it and how much more it has to run, there is definitely a case for businesses to do a bit more of the heavy lifting and to share that burden with Australian families.
Well, the first public hearings for that inquiry will be held in Melbourne next week before moving then on to Sydney. So watch this space.